Here we have to say that's an ongoing effort. COVID-19 basically induced a general standstill in investments. However, we received already several major orders this year, but this is for sure also our big target in the years to come. We want to further improve profitability. This we have achieved. We have strongly improved our profitability. On one hand, to optimizing our processes, but also to long-term cost reductions we have done over the last years. We wanted to evaluate the probability to grow to a 1 billion euro revenue business area in the long term, also with merger and acquisition. That is ongoing, but you will see later that this is a clear target to reach that in the near future. Offering attractive IoT solutions with Matrix, I think we have several very good examples, so we could state achieved on that side. Maybe as an overview, where is separation in? Generally, you can say we are well above 40% in the service portion, and the remainder, if you look on the separation portfolio, which is dewatering, drying, is in 4 major industries, all big. Most of them are very well growing, but we are only not covering the whole industries, but they are niches. So it's food, beverage, environment, which is our biggest portion of the business, in the chemical sector, and the mining and mineral. What are we covering? So basically we have around, I would say, at least 20 product homes, all dealing with dewatering and drying. So on dewatering, you can look into filter presses. We have filter presses, lighter versions for environment, heavy duty for the mining industry. We have decanters, we have pusher peeler centrifuges, separators, we have all kind of disc and drum filters, pressurized ones, vacuum ones, hyperbaric filters. We have screens, drains, presses, screw presses, belt presses, several types from light duty in environment to heavy duty presses for the mining industry. So we can clearly say we have the biggest portfolio by far compared to our competition, which offers good opportunities for the future, but has been a challenge we were fighting the last years. If you look at the drying areas, we have several drying technologies, starting from belt dryers, drum dryers, pedal dryers, rotary dryers, fluidized bed dryers, plate dryers. This gives us the possibility to offer the best and most suitable solution to our clients' challenges. This is a clear USP compared to our competition, which maybe can offer only one solution and has to offer it, even if it's not maybe the right one. But it has been for us, you can say, bloody journey to get all these aligned, because we still have theoretically competing products, and in order to align that and organize ourselves with a clear focus on industries, with a clear industry management, offering the best out of our basket, took some time, but I can say we have achieved that, and this is also part of the improvements we can see in this business area. Next. Okay, if you look for the feed and biofuel area, we are in animal feed, aqua feed, pet food, small today as an industry, but strongly growing, and in the biofuel, offering equipment under complete solutions, with also various techniques, starting from pellet presses, hammer mills, up to basically extruders, and in biofuel, basically we can cover together with the technologies from the pulp and paper, the complete process, starting from the log until the final pellet, whether it's a biomass pellet, solid biofuel, or waste pellet. Our focus strategy is based on 4 pillars, and the future we are targeting, since we have reached I would say acceptable profitability. The target is to grow from the current base, is, as stated already before, getting from an equipment supplier to a solutions provider. We want to be one of the most innovative companies in the industry. We want to be service driven, keep our service mind, and we strive for being excellent in all the business operations we are in. Just to give you an overview of some of the innovations we have been working on in the past years, lately, very much striving what we're also doing in the pulp and paper service. We want to offer solutions which enable us, which enable our customers to lower their operating costs, whether it's energy reduction, chemical reductions, flocculants, and so on, or it's steam consumption reductions. The other thing what we are aiming for is to get our product costs down, either by improving the operations that we can with existing sizes achieve a higher throughput, or working on simplified designs of our machines, thus lowering the product cost. One example, for example, when you see in the middle, extension of application range with the vacuum drum filter. Basically, we have replaced the drum from the very expensive Hastelloy material to a much lighter to a much lighter version, which is basically high resistant polymer, and it also gives some operating cost benefits, lower energy consumption for our customers. In a similar range is the energy efficiency pusher centrifuge, also with a simplified design, lighter design, thus lowering also energy consumption. And a very interesting development was the so-called intelligent filter press. Basically here we are optimizing the press time, the time we use for pressing, which can be from a few seconds to 10 minutes, by measuring pressure, temperature in the cake. How we do that? We have installed sensors in the filter plate and in the filter cloth, thus making them to an intelligent filter plate, filter cloth. On one hand, by optimizing the press time, we can increase the throughput with existing machines. On the other hand, we can lower the energy costs for the customers by reducing unnecessary press time. That was a few examples on that. If you look for the animal feed biofuel area, we are working basically the majority of our R&D expenses and development goes into life cycle management. optimizing our existing machines, upgrading machines to have a dual use, not only like the Paladin for biofuel, but also for waste compacting, which we believe will be a major trend in the years to come. On the innovation side, we are developing, let's say, completing our product range, developing equipment we have not been yet in, like twin screw extruder. On the aftermarket, I have to excuse, there is a typo in there, but in the aftermarket we have more than 10,000 machines in our online spare catalog. The aim is to make it easier to make business with us. What can we achieve by that? We can reduce heavily the time for quotations, because we have all the parts in a 3D model in our spare part catalog. Customers can choose, our engineers can easily find, and we have managed in many cases to get for 80% of our business, we can quote within 24 hours, and speed kills in many cases, that you can increase your market share on parts. If you look market potential, on one hand, we are looking into new mega trends, like what I will show a little bit later, this non-animal protein as a potential growing market. And we are also investing in extending our product footprint. We are currently executing a large investment in a new dye manufacturing plant in China, which gives us the possibility, by being local for local, to increase our price competitiveness, but also lead time to a major market, avoiding shipping these products from Europe. We are already world market leader in this wear part on dyes, but I think we can extend that position by being also now directly present in Asia. And this is an example of this mattress wipe monitoring system. Basically, we have decided, and we are doing it already, to equip all our delivered machine with these sensors, giving the possibility to continuously monitor the equipment, kind of an asset management also. This gives the ability to plan downtime, because we can foresee when a part should be changed. That reduces downtime, increases the availability of our customers, and we see big success, and it also enables us to make long-term service agreements with the customers, because we can also provide the service from outside the customer location by collecting all the data and giving advice to the customer when which part should be changed, what's the optimum time. Okay? And that's one I would say target where we want to get in. We have stated already before that we are going in growing markets like e-mobility with lithium, where we have achieved a very good market penetration, delivering to all the major global customers in that area, mine operators. And here, alternative proteins are a future trend with very good growth rates. If you go to plant protein, majority is pea protein. We have a growth potential, annual growth potential of 7.7%. Here there are established big players, and we have been in contact, and we are delivering to the major players like Roquette, DSM. For example, we have been major equipment delivered to the biggest investment of Roquette ever in Canada, on a pea protein plant. Insects is a small business today, but foreseen strongly growing with nearly 50% growth per annum. Here we are basically in contact with startup companies like this insect or biofly tech, and also we are discussing with the companies active in the algae market. This is part of our strategy to really enter new markets. I mean, we are not planning to go into industry where our competition since decades has leading positions, like in the breweries or milk producers, but going into these new applications. Another application, for example, is the tailings in the mining industry. The investments have been postponed due to, I would say, COVID, because governments didn't want to further punish the industry, but there is a big need to dewater the ponds. Many of you will remember the tragedy which has happened in Brazil and also in Hungary with the red mud, where dozens of people died because the dam broke, and then the red mud basically devastated complete villages. There's a trend to basically empty these ponds, dewater these ponds, and make it safe. We are investing also in that. How we want to achieve that? We have decided to invest in a pilot plant, because a lot of these alternative protein and such investments are based on a joint development with the major customers. And by having the possibility that our customers can basically test their products or their processes in our pilot plant, we think we can expand or enter really this market as a complete solution provider. Summarizing roadmap 22-24, I think already have stated, further establish ANDRITZ as premium brands, non-animal protein, e-mobility, grow the business volume to €1 billion. So we have made the next step, not evaluate, but grow it really there. We want to become a technology leader, by investments in pilot plants, increase launch of new products, and we are closing still white spots with our service growth, investment in bare part manufacturing, new dye shop in China, etc. We have raised our EBITDA margin goal to 9 to 11%. I think if you look our half-year numbers, you can see we are well in this direction. But we want to keep the profitability also. We foresee that the growth in the capital business will outperform the still 2 to 3 times the market. Also here, growth in the service business to reach this 1 billion target, in spite of a higher capital portion in the capital service share. We still believe that with the continuation of cost out, transfer of products and engineering to best cost country, we can reach that. We have to complete, we have done a lot in the past, the restructuring of low performing units, and we have a lot of manufacturing engineering we have transferred from the high cost countries, Germany, to so-called best cost countries. Process solution I've stated, and another goal is to gain a digital leadership by implementing innovative and integrated solutions. Here we benefit as the smallest business area from the bigger business area in the ANDRITZ group and our automation group. Thank you, that was it. I'm open for questions.
Okay. Many thanks, Hubert. Now we are ready for questions, and Sven again. Sven, please.
Yeah, thanks for taking my question. It's on the M&A side in separation? I mean, we know that especially on the decanter side, the market is extremely fragmented with a lot of private players, probably one of the most fragmented markets you compete in. But consolidation has not really happened in the last few years. So is it that all of these private players are not for sale, or how do you evaluate the situation there?
On one hand, it's very much family business, which are maybe not for sale. The other thing is, as I said, buying another decanter company may not solve our strategy to move from equipment supplier to a solution supplier. So I think we have done a lot of these acquisitions of competing products in the past. We have suffered for years on that, because even if we part of ANDRITZ, they still competed with each other inside the company. So the strategy really to buy another competitor to consolidate the market on the equipment level is not really what we're looking for. We are looking more for buying or acquiring companies which can offer process solutions, engineering solutions, or having a technology not yet in our product portfolio, but not buying a pure competitor where we are daily in competition on a single equipment business.
Thank you. And then you mentioned about innovation, right? I remember a few years ago we had these issues in separation with a product introduction in China, I think, which are now sorted, of course. But how do you make sure that these things don't happen again?
That was basically the big issues we had, bringing unmature products to the market. I think we have professionalized much more. I mean, we have solved the issues there. They are quite long, but let's say, we suffered a few years on that. But if I look the last 5-6 years, we never had a case where we brought in a product in the market. I mean, at that time, let's say, not very intelligent solution was not only just bring one product to a customer, but we sold at the same time 12 prototypes to a number of customers. Now, if we bring in a new product, is that basically we inform the customer that it is a newly developed product, and we make sure that we only sell one of a kind proof that it's working before we roll it out in the market. This may not bring us so fast in a growth mood, but it brings us in a safe growth mood.
Okay, thank you.
Our mistakes.
Okay, many thanks, Sven. Any other questions? Otherwise, Wolfgang, I think.
I'm filling the time. I think, separation has frequently been questioned. Does it fit into the ANDRITZ portfolio? It's basically 10% of our sales. It's on the one hand, we are in separation. We're bigger than many of the competitors in separation, but we are smaller than a few big competitors. And obviously, the concentration was on the big competitors, and the question was: is there a way you can run this business successfully? At that time, we said we want to turn it around first, develop the potential, and then we can decide whether we divest or whether we keep. In the end, we have decided, after turning it around and after really showing that we can make it profitable, to keep it. Why have we decided that? Number one, it's from a risk profile, although we just heard the story about these 12, I think, prototypes, but still, on a risk profile, it is far, far less risky than the big project we do in pulp and paper, in steel, or in many other areas. Number two, size may be important, but it's more important is the market is a competitive position in individual segments. And these segments are very small, and these segments tend to be dominated by very different competitors. We think that to be successful in these segments, ideally you can offer solutions. Humbert talked about that, meaning to cover the better part of the respective process line, which, by the way, has been the success principle we had in pulp, for example, concentrating on adding complementary products and not buying direct competitors of products we already have. There are many success stories in this separation business area. You know, the biggest baby food manufacturer in the world is relying exclusively on ANDRITZ dryers. Humbert mentioned that in dyes, there is no pellet without a dye. In dyes, we are #1 globally. That's a good example, by the way, that you can develop a very successful, profitable business providing or supplying wear parts, these famous engineered wear parts, to customers that are running competitors' pellet presses in this case. So we are seen as a leading independent, more or less independent die manufacturer. Doesn't play an important role that we also offer the pellet presses. Customers decide for our dies. We have a very strong position in wastewater treatment, sludge, the handling of the sludge that comes out of these treatment plants. Remember, we built the biggest plants for Hong Kong, for Shanghai, for Singapore, many other countries, many other cities. I think there, as I said, there are many, maybe one last example. We have developed a new separation technology, let's call it cross-flow filtration. Today, by far the biggest supplier of a very important life-saving pharmaceutical ingredient, so commands some global market share of more than 60%, I think, is relying on this cross-flow filtration equipment from ANDRITZ. So I think there's no chance to make a big jump organically. I mean, you have to conquer each small segment after the other, develop technology, develop expertise for the complete process. Ideally, you can add one or the other company, complementary company, to be successful in these segments, and that's our goal. Now, the 1 billion obviously would require sizable acquisitions in the next 3 years, but you know, if you give us 1 or 2 more years, I think we can also achieve it organically. Have you promised to achieve 1 billion without acquisitions? Onward?
I said that we are going towards this 1 billion without acquisitions. Maybe not 24, maybe it's 25.
Okay.
But 4 very small acquisitions just to complete the range, helping us to offer complete solutions.
And in short, there are definitely organic growth opportunities. There are also maybe one or the other M&A opportunity. And we think separation will continue to be a nicely profitable, growing part of ANDRITZ.
Okay, thank you very much. As there are no further questions, I think we'll then move on to the hydropower business, and then I would like to ask Wolfgang Semper to present hydropower. I will start sharing the presentation. Okay, so go on. Yeah, I try. Try again. Yeah, that's fine. Not. Give me a minute.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon to everybody. Now my turn to introduce Hydro. I'm going to follow the same pattern, just to review the past period a little bit, where we have had a strong focus on right-sizing structures, capacity adjustments, keeping in mind to remain on a reasonable profitability. So we achieved only 2020, we had a more significant one-time cost for adjustments where we didn't fulfill our promises, being within this 7 to 8.5% ROS corridor. But we have been very much committed to this, and I'm very confident that we have right-sized the company now, adjusted to a low level in revenues, and I will introduce later on that there are good beliefs that volume will grow, and we have a very competitive structure. Also, there is changes in the market environment itself, so we have more projects in the brownfield area, means upgrading existing power stations, re-equipping existing power stations. This trend will continue. Example, Brazil, typical greenfield market where big installations are taking place in the past decades. Today, almost no new installations anymore, but the hydropower plants are aging there, and therefore we see great opportunities in refurbishment business. So, also in the European context, even though there is a very much agenda to carbon-free energy, we see that there is a strong trend to not continue anymore with small hydropower, new installations. It's rather here that this will be substituted by solar and wind installations, and Europe will concentrate again on brownfield as well as on storage capacities. So here we have had to react. So there is also not only restructuring in size, but also restructuring in structures and in new missions for the one or other location. Well, we do think that we are on the right track, and we have some success stories on that to report on operation and maintenance, and compare or connected with this is of course a strong digitalization roadmap. We are very much successful. We have been operating now more than, or at least having in the O&M business in more than 100 power plants, and we will continue on this road. Why do we believe that hydro still, even though it's a very old business, is attractive for 2050 net zero emission strategies? So without hydro, the new renewables, like some people are calling this wind, solar, will not be able to support really the energy transition. So hydro, and I will come later on with one of the other slides, still is in the energy mix plays a very important role, and it will grow since we will be seeing that carbon-based energy or electricity and thermal power plants will go out more and more, and will be substituted. And hydropower has a decent share of that. So if we believe what Irina is saying, what International Energy Agency is saying, and many others, there is an accelerated pace in new installations in Asia, an accelerated pace in brownfield rehabilitation. On the next slide, we give some evidence that hydropower is a really important contributor to system flexibility and stability. So you see, if we are discussing batteries and storage for electricity, even in the context of, if you compare it just to pump storage, it plays a non-significant role today, and will not even play a significant role in the decade from now. If we take the full capacity of hydropower, then you hardly can see batteries in this chart. So there is a growing role in this context also for hydropower. So it doesn't matter whether we discuss whether we enlarge or whatsoever, but hydropower needs to stay in the energy mix, otherwise we will face a tough time. On the next slide, I'm going to elaborate a little bit brownfield versus greenfield. So you'll see here what is the expectation on a conservative scenario laid out by the International Energy Agency as far as the capacity is concerned. So you can have much more aggressive ones where the new installed gigawatt will be way higher than indicated here. However, if you see this is an almost 50-50 split already in greenfield versus brownfield, and of course on the right chart, on the right side of the chart, you'll see what is the share of brownfield, or how is brownfield defined, and what is the share of upgrade, and what is the share of real replacement. Means replacement is like a new power plant without the civil structure. For the E&M supplier, it doesn't make that much difference. Since you come completely with the new, most modern technology, once you go for upgrade, most of the components, stationary components, will remain in the powerhouse. Therefore, you have a lot of special adaptations for the changed parts and isophysical R&D development in order to really upgrade means to increase power output. The influence of NGOs on the brownfield is of course way less harsh than on the greenfield. So given that scenario, we do see great opportunities for our company here to accelerate further our growth, and we are quite sure that we can increase our market share. Global market, you have seen this chart since some time in the presentations. Picture is not changing that dramatic, so we have years up and downs with larger single power plants where they are going to drive the order intake in a single year. If you go on the average, we do see quite a base load, let's say, in that way, where you have reasonable sizes, and the 1 other year, as I mentioned before, will be overloaded by a single larger or 2 or 3 single larger projects. 2020 was, of course, affected due to COVID. We have seen postponements, especially in the brownfield rehabilitation business, since utilities and investors didn't risk that much if there was no emergency to stop a existing running power plant to rehabilitate if they could afford to postpone by another year. We see this year quite an excellent development in this field. Was mentioned in the introduction by Mr. Leitner that hydro is 100% green energy, and if you go to the next slide, we give some evidence on that. So we have obviously hydro is usually way faster than we receive it. It deals along with sustainable solutions products and how hydro contributes to climate neutrality and climate protection.
Lassen Sie so das einfach. Lassen Sie so. Die Präsentation, jetzt geht.
Ja,
Jetzt geht's aber jetzt.
No, it was here.
Ja.
Sie müssen alle diese
So, now we have it. So, again, a study by IEJ in this respect and IEA that more than 4,000 terawatt hours of electricity every year is supplied by hydropower, and then you can start some equations. What would this mean if we have been substituted by coal-fired power plants? What is the emission? But just in this context, if you have a look on the last bullet point, ANDRITZ, with this global installed fleet, has around 900 million tons per year contribution on reducing CO2 emissions. So it's around 1/4 of the installed fleet, which gives us, as mentioned before, in the brownfield sector, excellent opportunities. The other angle where we do see is, of course, that pump storage hydropower is like a green rechargeable battery, but this is, I guess, well known. We just need to reinforce that this is not fake, this is a reality, and it's, from today's point of view, the only industrial size storage possibility for electricity, for energy. If we go to our product portfolio, I assume you are very familiar, but just to remind you, so we are in a position to deliver for all types, all sizes, electromechanical equipment for the hydropower plants. There's more than 32,000 turbines out, corresponding to more than 470,000 megawatts. We have quite an impressive fleet. We are well positioned in modernization and retrofitting, so we have quite a history on that, and we perceive ourselves as trained and market leaders in this respect. There is some niches where we have good references. So in terms of tidal current turbines, it's not a big driver today in our volume. However, we do think that there might be the one other interesting opportunity in the next future. Tidal, like when we have the largest installations equipped or refurbished out of ANDRITZ Hydro Group. What we discussed in the very beginning, operation and maintenance, asset management services, becomes more and more important. So more than in the past, financial investors are going in hydropower. They don't have big experience in running the power plant. They don't have the employees to maintain the power plant. So they are relying more and more on suppliers and on us to keep the power plants in an optimized way up and running. As far as pumps is concerned, so we do have process pumps predominantly for the pulp and paper industry, where we have quite a substantial share, and special pumps for water transportation, desalination, and other special applications, which fits pretty well to all the R&D activities in the agri-food. Coming again back to our operation maintenance scenario, asset management platform based on Meta Mirror, and we'll see later on in the presentation of automation, and you have already heard by Joachim that we have a common goal and common development in the ANDRITZ group as far as automation is concerned. So we are pretty much engaged in this type of services. We are enhancing almost day by day with new apps, and we have a philosophy that we have, as far as possible, common developments, however specialized later on to the various types of business we do have, since they are very much different. Now, being more precise on hydro, so we have of course, here a very much physical dominated situation. It's not that much complicated to run unmanned power plants, and this has been the case since many years with an automated platform. It's made more complicated if you're in the processing industry, since there is many other parameters. So we are trying together with our clients to monitor, to fingerprint on a real-time basis all the equipment in a hydropower plant, coming to optimization, how the individual turbines, turbine generator sets interact, how they play within a cascade in an optimized way. In an optimized way, that the output is of course optimized, that we operate in the best range, but also in an optimized way, since power plants are running way more in a flexibility mode than 10, 15, 20 years ago, to have the best maintenance strategy and the least wear on these power plants. So this is a challenge for the owner of the power plants to minimize the maintenance risk and to plan it in a way that they can deliver when the market demands. So we have the advantage that we are engaged in this business. We get the feedback for our design and our engineering. On the one hand, we are more and more biased after having commissioning the power plant to stay with the client, to stay in the power plant for many, many years. So it's an ongoing business, and we have quite an OEM status later on once it comes to larger investments in terms of refurbishment. Research and development goes not only in performance, but also in environmental performance. Means that there is a strong focus to get the turbine generator and all the auxiliary equipment oil-free. So it's not that easy to do this, since it's water lubricated, it's heavy equipment, up to 100, 200 tons, being on bearings, where they were used in the past to see some oil for lubrication. So all this is pretty much industry friendly. We do feel that we are on top of this. We have already more than 120 references in completely old redesign, and this is the trend, especially if we touch the brownfield. It really becomes a challenge to convert an old-fashioned power plant to a oil-free design power plant. Fish friendliness is also a concern. There is still some fishes trying to route their way up or down through the turbines, and there is special effort where 15, 20 years ago in the US market, but now going more and more to Europe and Asia as well, to have special designs that we don't harm fishes, and this can be proven in test laboratories. This can be seen with sensor fishes in a certain trial period, and also here we get excellent feedback from independent international institutes, and of course from our customers, that we are doing a good job. In some rather southern areas, this whole oxygen plays a role. So we have here certain designs where we can feed downstream oxygen to the water in order to regain favorable oxygen rates in the downstream water, which is in the southern area. sometimes. In terms of grid flexibility and grid stability, we are pretty much on the edge, so we have developed and have excellent references in new generator technologies in terms of variable speed. So variable speed is used in order to increase the range where you can, in an optimized way, operate your pump turbines. Means that you can either have better efficiency or you can have a better way to stabilize the grids, and you are way faster than possibility on large scale. So we have quite good references in variable speed with double-fed induction machines, full-size converters. We are just implementing this first power plant here in Austria, in the Küta area. And for us, new application is synchronous condenser in order to stabilize the grid. If you have very long transmission lines, you need to have in between masses, physical masses, and this is synchronous condensers and generators. Just being here not to generate energy, but just to stabilize energy, stabilize the grid. And here we have special applications, so it was in the industry available out of the turbo generators all the time. But as it becomes more and more critical, demands and are more sophisticated, we have developed in a certain range synchronous condensers, and we are quite successful now in Australia, in Brazil, in the US, and there is more to come. So we're very confident. Now you come to example that this leads also to success, not only to nice pictures. Australia is very much committed to convert from thermal energy to renewable energy, and therefore there is quite some activity there, and we have backed an order for a pump turbine, and the speciality on this pump turbine is this is in an old mining area. The mine was closed, but there was still infrastructure available to distribute and transmit energy. So there was some years ago the idea to install a solar power plant, and it's now being complemented with a wind power plant as well as with the pump storage power plant. And so you could, the client can now guarantee energy delivery at a certain date with a certain power, what he couldn't before once he has just solar and just wind. So this is a tremendous advantage in the feasibility, and we are going to equip this power plant and operate and maintain this power plant at least 10 years after we have commissioned this power plant. Gives also very much confidence to the lenders, and so it was a win-win for the client. Examples, modernization and upgrade. So especially in North America, there is a lot of mature power plants, and there is very ambitious plans in Canada. If you have a look on Quebec, what they are going to announce, what will happen in the next 10 years. In Carillon is just a starting point where we just recently got the order to upgrade rehabilitate turbine generators as well on steel structures and hydraulic water passages. It's 14 units. It's a long-term engagement from our side, gives us a pretty sound and reasonable baseload for our locations in Canada. Same with Rock Island and more to come in the US, of course. And we have been in this business since many, many years. And in Mexico, also larger power plants are going to be upgraded now, and we are well positioned in this country. And do have a quite good mix on the low-cost operation in Mexico and engineering-based and R&D-based location in Canada and USA. As far as innovation is concerned, we are also engaged in some European funded projects. One example here is that we are upgrading our knowledge how batteries for fast and dynamic frequency response influences the hydropower equipment, what is the need on the equipment, how we need to design the equipment, what will change. And here we are pretty good in this environment that we can learn a lot, that we can develop our systems, and we can come with decent strategies and decent solutions. Yeah, what is the roadmap? We have divided the roadmap in the traditional business model, where we keep going, being cost competitive, means we have a very close look on our structures, on our internal costs, on our products being tailor-made. It's always a prototype. However, we need to also understand and we need to be very sure what is the need of our clients in order not to over-engineer our product. So we are engaging also in this early stage development, not as investors, but as technology partner. We gain a preferred partner status and can later on benefit from the potential of the project and from the optimizations. We have partnering models where we also benefit in a kind of bonus scheme if we really can get the project more feasible than might have been before. Research and development, I guess I have elaborated on that. Just to, as a side remark, we will commission the most modern high-head test rig 2022. So this will really leapfrog our possibilities, especially for turbine development, and services is still a driver in our business, and we are really enlarging day by day our services, our offerings. We have regional control centers to operate the power plants, and this will be spanned all over. So, having said that, we have been committing ourselves to at least 7% return on sales and a business volume of 1.5 billion. But there is more to come, hopefully. Means if we believe in all the announcement on the Green Deals, carbon neutrality, there is of course way more possibilities to grow our business, to grow the hydro business as such. Is what I mentioned before. There will be more and more integrated plants. So there is a lot of fantasies in the community, and we are well positioned. Synchronous condenser, I mentioned before, we have quite backed some good orders where we generate good references, where we are selecting our technology, superior solutions, and not only on the price. Batteries, we have the one or other idea. We have a cooperation with Mercedes-Benz Energy. They are good in dealing with batteries and for not for storage as such, but for fast frequency response, for demand response for the client that can deliver within seconds the full energy, and then the power plant takes over. All these are possibilities that we explore. We are reducing that there's one or other additional advantage from our technology position compared to our competitors. Green hydrogen, I don't think it can become a real driver for new installations. There were a lot of remote sites discussed 20 years, 30 years, 40 years ago. None of them materialized since there was always where is the need for the energy, and do I have an industry close to the remote possibility for energy for hydropower plants. Today we see with the green hydrogen that there can be the solution to shift then hydrogen out of these remote solutions, and we have the one other project already, at least in discussion. There is a huge potential on that, and if you just see that for 1 ton steel production to decarbonize the production, I'm not discussing arc furnaces, I'm not discussing downstream activities. You need 500 megawatt installed capacity running 6,000 hours a year. So just to compare a little bit, there is a R&D project running with First Alpine, and to decarbonize just the 6-ton First Alpine power steel plant, it would need around 1.5 times the capacity we produce on electricity within the limits of within the Austrian borders on the Danube. So there is huge potential, and this is just the beginning of the story. So therefore, we believe that there is potential for further growth in hydropower. That ends my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we open for any questions. So far, no question. Oh, Simon again, please go ahead.
So I'd be interested to know who you regard as your stiffest competition, and when do you typically beat them, and when do you typically lose to them? What sort of attributes of the deal are you less strong on?
Yeah, but it depends on there is of course some global players where we have of course in the one or other project a better solution in terms of being tailor-made, and maybe they have or we have higher peak efficiency, or we do have a better overall layout. I guess this is where we want to step in as preferred partners very early in these developments of these power plants to create a certain edge. So I think we are doing good in this proximity with the clients. So we are perceived, I would say, at the same level like our main competitors, and we can name them. It's GE, it's Voith on a global basis, and we have to see the single project. So of course there is certain strengths we do have, and if you have a look on our references, so this is very much important for the clients as well. Our equipment should last at least 50 years plus, so reference plays a big role. If we go on a very regional basis to the lower end in terms of output of our machine types, then of course there is some local players where maybe just the capex is the most driving force, where technology not that much important for a certain client. Then we have a hard understanding. But I guess on a reasonable technology technology driven. It's really the single project which is decisive.
Okay.
As far as service is concerned, I guess we are pretty much local in many of the main regions, and here really this proximity is key to solve the client, and with our development in operational maintenance, I guess we create an edge once again.
Okay, thank you.
Good. There are no. Oh, Teresa. Teresa, please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, thank you. So, in about the same time, we have heard the benefits of hydro generation for the energy transition, for seasonal storage. The cost of the alternative renewables have fallen by, almost 80%. And the developers are willing to sell these projects at 2% return on equity if they get a PPA from Amazon or the like. And we see record electricity prices, at least in Europe. What do you think? What could make hydro attractive enough to divert some of the billions that are already scheduled to be invested in renewables energies? Would it be PPAs? Would it be a return to a regulated return system? What's your view on that?
If you see the level as cost of energy, hydro is still in a competitive range. Of course, if it comes to large installations, more competitive than it can if the plant sizes are smaller. And this, I guess, is of course, and we see in some markets already, small hydro can't compete if there is a good wind site, if there is a quite reasonable solar focus in a certain area. So this will definitely shrink this market segment. But on the other hand, I guess from today's point of view, short and mid-term, there is no substitution for pumped storage as kind of, as I mentioned before, as green battery on an industrial scale, in order just to balance the energy, since it's always, on the one hand, if you see installed capacities in certain areas, in wind, in solar, overwhelming, they have nice growth rates. However, if you see an average runtime of 2,000 to 3,000 hours, is only half of what our hydropower can provide. So therefore, the figures itself are not so much decisive, and it's the mix. So we don't see that we are competing with this renewables development. So we are part of, and we continue being an important part in the mix in order to stabilize the grid, in order really to have the possibility to convert from coal and fuel-based energy production towards carbon-free production. So therefore, it's not the one or the other. It's the combination that makes sense, and this is what all studies just confirm.
But what would really, but what would really incentivize the investments? Because even for grid stabilization, coal-fired power plants are paid by transmission system operators.
If you apply ancillary services, if they are paid for, then of course pump storage power plant will become highly competitive again. If you just operate a pump storage power plant on the spread of peak energy versus base energy, you will not invest anymore. So this is a clear scenario, and therefore the last few years there was a certain stalemate in this, since there was no regulation on that. So I don't believe that it's a regulated market, but it will come that grid operators, they are independent from the producer, need to invest in a certain way to stabilize the grid and to be able to deliver at the time when they have to deliver. And this is again plays hydro in the cards, since there is storage capacity, so we are able to provide fast frequency response, which can't be with wind, neither with solar. Batteries to a very limited extent. So all this goes for hydro. Again,
Thank you.
The development but being an integrated part.
Yeah, maybe to conclude, I mean, clearly, hydropower, in our opinion, has a future. It has a future independently from whether the governments will have to release laws, regulations to save CO2 or not. As in the past, hydropower is a low-cost producer of green energy, and therefore it has a future on its own. I mean, we all know that the climate discussion today, as of today, the CO2 discussion as of today, is to a large extent lip service. I mean, CO2 is nowhere declining, and if we believe that to a certain extent that the governments will become serious, I mean, there will be such a shortage of green electricity that I think everybody will embrace every possible technology to create this capacity, even without taking into account this transportation issue with regard to hydrogen, or in the steel industry, whatever. And the calculation that Wolfgang gave you on what it means to convert one steel mill to hydrogen basically says, you know, our discussion today is relatively independent from the factual situation. I mean, for sure, the energy consumption will continue to grow. I mean, we have added 5 billion people to the world population within the last 70 years, and up from 3 billion to 8 billion. And all forecasts say it will continue to grow, whether it's going to be 10 billion or 11 billion in 20, 30 years. Nobody knows, but I think the most conservative forecasts say 10 billion is the minimum. And they will, and these 10 billion, there may be some people saving some energy by driving or running a bicycle in Europe, but the vast majority, if I take the 8 billion today, at least 7 billion of these 8 billion have other interests, have other goals. They want to live a better life. And we make a big mistake if we think that you know, Europe is representative for that, and suddenly the world will start saving CO2. So I think we see very little downside. Coming back to very realistic assessment, we see very little downside on the current business volume that hydro has. It's no guarantee that there is not a year lower, maybe, but very little downside. And all the factors that are set to become more important in the future would be in favor of green electricity, and there is no reason why hydro should not play an important role in this green electricity capacity expansion, because it's cost competitive. There's no question that hydro has the same low costs as wind or solar, and it's more stable, and it's completely green. So I think we feel comfortable with this basic outlook. Does that translate into 300 million more order intake next year? No, certainly not. But medium term, long term, we have no concern about the future of hydro. We need to make sure that our cost base is correct for the volume that we achieved, depending on the market, depending on our market share. If we do that and continue to do that and continue to refine it, I have no concern about the sustainability of our hydropower business.
Okay. Many thanks. As there are no further questions, I think we'll move on then to the automation part.
I keep going. Automation within the ANDRITZ group, it's more and more important. Of course, we heard from all the business areas that they bet to a certain extent the services on matrix development, which is the benchmark automation in ANDRITZ. So you see that automation is well positioned all over the world. So there is quite a community on automation guys, 1800 plus in the hydro field, and we are in all our business areas represented. The revenues is 650 million around. It's 10% of the ANDRITZ revenues, and there is a strong desire to grow over proportionally. So we believe that automation will play a more important part as it has been today. So what makes us different to the big players? So we are well aware that there are sharks out in this environment, and they promise automation is all and they can do everything. So they can deal with big data and can provide you all the automation you need, and why not believe in them? So we do think that we have, on the one hand, the technology competence in the processes and in the business areas where we are in. So this is a huge advantage. We understand what are the needs and goals. We understand how to interpret whatever we get and collect on data. That's why we have a very strong angle in this respect, which is not true if you hear this from the big automation companies or the big cloud-based data collectors. We have experience in running the show in the large projects. We have EPC competence paired with our automation. So we feel confident at the site. We know how to integrate in the installation process. We know how to integrate in the commissioning process. We can deal, once it comes to service and rehab, with all different kinds of hardware. We are hardware independent. We are discussing software solutions, which also leads us to the big automation companies where they do have their own hardware to a certain advantage. And all this leads really then to this life cycle services where we elaborated on in the various business areas. Joachim and Humbert were coming with examples in the pulp and paper area, but of course even in the more product-oriented business like in separation, we have a lot of things to provide to the client to optimize the use of his equipment. In hydro, just before I told our O&M strategy. The industry we are serving is challenged by many different DCS systems, different hardware systems. They are going and striving towards fully automated production. We have all the threats out of cybersecurity. We need to, or they need to, and we need to go towards more production flexibility, and all this is spared in our matrix platform. So we are not perfect now. We haven't developed everything, but we have a clear vision and mission what we need to accomplish. Coming to the fields where we play in is, on the one hand, as I mentioned before, so we do see a lot of common development and a lot of synergies within the ANDRITZ group, even though the businesses are very much different. However, we are developing DCS, a common DCS. We have the same ideas on asset performance maintenance management. So we have process optimization. So the basic understanding is that we have a common platform and then come to the particular specialities of the various industries, and I will come later on with some examples. If we go to the next slide, also here we see if the operator continues to move. Okay, thank you.
It's working.
If we come to the next slide, we see that there is different stages how we define automation. So there is the classic automation where we do have our distributed control systems, where we have our motors and drives automated, integrated in systems. So what is very much common and what we have been doing since decades. If we go a little bit further, we have this asset performance and maintenance management. We have then process optimization. So here it plays into our cards that we know the industry, we know the products, we know the demands of our clients, and therefore we can run this in a better way than many of our competitors. And of course, we strive now for more advanced performance services. Is really the optimization of the production. It's really having performance monitoring, having cybersecurity services, and. So this are our three layers where we develop along our products. Coming to one specific angle out of this is this risk-based management. So we are hosting all the data now independent where we collect them, independent where are the suppliers of the either single device or part of the pulp mill or whatsoever. We are hosting all this information into one database. We have the capability to link this information. We have the capability to assess out of this complete database the meaning of this data, whether it's an asset problem, whether it's a process problem, whether we combine both, and we can then derive out of this the strategies. Strategies, again, serving the customer in a way that he get optimized maintenance strategies, that he get optimized production strategies. And here we can see that we have really a very, very powerful management system. And we are well advanced, and we have, I will later show some example, where we have developed, of course, not only one, but gradually pulp and paper plants to a high successful optimized plants. Cybersecurity, I guess we have seen by Joachim what is the idea and the deal in pulp and paper. This is very much true for the automation business as such. But just to demonstrate also, there is a type test of each and every software we develop in terms of cybersecurity. So we have really expert models in order to assess whether we are vulnerable or not. We have automated checks for each and every ANDRITZ delivery out to the field. So there is no delivery not checked on cybersecurity compatibility. And we have, of course, for service, the after-sales service. So we do have quite extensive programs to have spot tests where we see whether the plant still is secured. And we also deliver a service where we have 24 hours, 7 days, a permanent surveillance of the plant in terms of cybersecurity. Coming to the examples, one for energy utilities. So we see here what means the common development then for hydropower. So we have special products developed for hydropower. So we have an automation platform all in one again, where we can serve a hydropower plant to the full extent in terms of protection, excitation, control, and synchronization, and have then a layer above to complete the control room applications with our Scala system. Same in a little bit different way, we provide to the process industry. If we come to the next slide, where we have also a modular approach. There is many services and many apps you can choose on, and what fits to your needs, what fits to your application, you get. So we are not providing only one system, so we are providing a system, a base system with many, many features, and you can choose also the level support. So either you think you can deal with this solution self-sufficient, you need an expert on the phone, or you need an expert at site. Whatever you choose, we have our models for that, and so the client will be served in the best possible way. What I mentioned before, what does this mean to the pulp and paper industry, for example? So we have been with the Susano Group since 2007 and maintaining and optimizing their pulp and paper mills over many, many years. And we started with assessment. We started with first optimization of parts of the plant, and today we can proudly present the figure that the client has benefited over 200 million with our services. So this is really a success story, and it's not only seen by this one group, so we have other installations as well, and this was presented by Humbert all over the world. We are going to implement the services. From the energy utilities, you see an example in terms of operation and maintenance. So we have got a contract from Enel, where we monitor 44 power plants over the next 3 years. It's around almost 10,000 megawatt installation in 5 countries in Latin America. All this will be done out of our location in Italy, in Schio, and the task is to assess, to draw the conclusions, and to come from preventive to predictive maintenance, which has then hopefully a significant cost reduction with our clients. And we are well underway, and we have an excellent feedback from our client that from day one we have had the low-hanging fruits collected, and now we are really going to optimize the strategies. So again, and this will hopefully then be a long-term agreement, long-term engagement with Enel in this respect. Another good example how we operate, or how we help to operate on a remote base, on an unmanned base. Almost all of them are unmanned. 125 power plants, we have provided to Uniper our SCADA system for operating their control room, and this is also a role model for the rest of the ANDRITZ group, where what we have been achieving since years now in hydropower can be rolled out to the other business areas to a certain extent as well. So what is our roadmap for the near future? So we do think that we have a good position in our traditional industry, so we will go more and more with the matrix platform to support new installations, to come to faster commissioning cycles as we have the digital twin already installed. We train our commissioning engineers, we train the engineers from the client in order to speed up the production in a new paper mill, for example, a pulp mill, for example, and drive further our asset performance systems, so to provide more and more sophisticated tools to the client to have best strategies to maintain and to optimize existing equipment. Yeah, that's my automation conclusion.
Many thanks. Now the floor is open for the questions. Just raise your hands. Oh, Andreas, yeah. Go ahead, Andreas.
Yeah, thank you very much. In terms of monetizing the customer benefits, we discussed that a few years ago in terms of the paybacks are very, very attractive for some of your customers. Do you see a trend that maybe you can gain a higher share of that value for yourself in terms of the awareness of customers, of the benefits and the willingness for them to accelerate some of these developments and for you to share in the upside of it?
Yeah, but there is some bonus-malus system where the malus is limited, but rather bonus system. If we really achieve what we promise, we get a fair share on that. We do think it could be a little bit more, but we get it. And for sure, in the long run, it's always a door opener, an enabler. You are sitting in this power plant, you get all the data you have access to, and you know better than any of your competitor what's going on, what is the maintenance strategy. So in terms of services, long-term services, and wear parts, we have excellent access then.
And in terms of the DCS system technology, is that what is yours and what is standard components or the base system you would buy in from one of the major players? Kind of where does your offering start in that sense?
Our offering starts that we apply our software solutions on various hardware. So we are not a hardware supplier. So that makes us independent and makes us also, if we are coming to existing plants, very much interesting, since we have the capability with our systems to apply them on different hardwares, which brings us then to the next level, that we have all data based in one combined system, where we can process this data then out of this system. So we are not becoming a hardware supplier in electronics.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. Now we have Sven again. Sven?
Yes, hi. I have a question regarding the profitability of automation. Valmet seems to make margins of between 10 to 12% on an EBIT level. Guess it's quite a similar offering. You are in the same neighborhood in the automation business?
We try not to dilute the ANDRITZ profitability. It's very different, of course, whether you be in the service business where you're just offering automation is dominating, then you usually have a excellent profitability. Once it goes along with the capital equipment, then there is always the discussion, what is the value of your equipment in automation? It goes volume-wise, it's of course a very little part of a 1 billion pulp mill. So therefore, we are not diluting the ANDRITZ result. Let's say in that way.
Sounds good. And if I may, I had a follow-up question on hydropower. What do you think about, when we think about climate change, obviously we have more heavy rain, extreme rain events, and I read recently an example about one of the Greece islands, which is using hydro reservoirs exactly for such events, right, where you have a lot of rain in a very short period of time, and that's increasing. Do you see any structural demand development also as pushing that for your hydropower business?
There is a lot of dams, of course, for flood regulation, for irrigation purposes, and what we do see that more and more of these dams are now being used for electricity generation as well. It becomes feasible especially if it is in remote areas, and so here we have a little civil structure, and therefore there is a certain trend now to harvest on that as well, especially in Asia. In the past, they were very much focused on the bigger the better, and now they see also this trend, and also here, to a certain extent, it's then paired with solar power or wind power, and you have then in a regional, very regional level, an electricity island, and which is then balanced by hydropower again. So this is a certain trend. I would not say it's now changing the picture completely, but it's one stone more in the puzzle.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Semper.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sven. As there are no further questions, I will then move on to Norbert and giving it to you on the financials of the group. Norbert, please start your presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. Start my presentation by myself, and it's easier to switch the slides and also a pointer. Yeah, it's my task now to explain what all these growth and profitability increase initiatives, which you have heard from the colleagues, will have on our overall group's financial KPIs, which means what impact will it have on net income, on equity, on cash and liability, which is finally then the basis for our ability to pay out sufficient and satisfying dividends in the future. Let me start with two pictures which you have seen already. First is a growth picture. Long-term performance of 4.3%, performance in the last years up to 5%, and as Dr. Leitner stated already in his introduction, we remain with our group a target of 5 to 8% growth, half of it organic, half of it by acquisition, which are rough numbers, simply to tell you that we need some acquisition also in the future to maintain these numbers in the level of 6 to 8%. And this is not plannable. We see what we can do. When we have a good chance, we will take it. When we don't have a chance, we will not buy simply for buying reasons. So we do it very carefully. So the growth finally will be determined by organic plus what we can get out of the markets as acquisition targets. But 5 to 8% is certainly something which we think is possible for the next years. And then you have seen also already the profitability targets from the colleagues for the individual business areas. Don't need to repeat it. Simply want to point out that in paper we are already there. There was a question, why not more? When you have reached a certain profitability level, from my point of view, you have to concentrate more on growth than on further improving the relative profitability by cherry picking or whatever. And any growth in the future in this field will also cost some money. So the target is clearly stay in this level and grow the business further on, which will have a much higher labor as another half of a percent point profitability. In separations, we are also already there. Here also same. You have heard it from Humbert's growth story for the future. Hydro nearly there. They have to work a little bit more on profitability, but also then shift the growth. And in metals, we have to make our homework, complete the homework completely to reach 6%. And Domenico explained clearly that this is very soon able to reach. So then comes the question, what does it mean for the group in total? And as the controller does here, I did it here, I did some arithmetics, simply added for, let's say, a reasonable level of 7.5 billion, which we intend to achieve in the next planning cycle of the next 3 years, with the upper and lower profitability levels. I did the calculations for the group simply to show you that there is, with regard to volume and with regard to profitability, also some room for risk, which is never avoidable in this kind of business where we are in. So we are pretty confident that also when one division might have a special risk and the performance is not at that range, that we will make the group targets of 8% at a minimum. And as we have announced some weeks ago, the 8% is also for this year already what we expect to achieve. So, and then based on this operational performance, the question comes, what does that mean for net income, which is the final truth, and at the end determine the dividend payments. Wolfgang Leitner mentioned in between the sentence, we have to close the gap. Exactly this is what we are trying to do. We want to make out of this 8% and at least higher than 5% net income, but not only looking to percentages, you should also look to the absolute impact of this. So the net income level which we intend to see in the future is certainly something sustainably significantly over the 300, so that we then are able to pay these dividends, which we did also in the past. Major drivers for this is very clearly the profitability out of the operational business, but we can also work on the things in the P&L which are below operational business. Currently, and these levers are amortization and financial result and tax level. With regard to the amortization, we are currently at a level of 60, which goes down to a level of 30 from 2023, simply based on the fact that these amortizations for Schuler and Foxerion are come to their end. I have in my basic calculation something in which leaves enough room for new IFRS 3 intangibles out of new acquisitions. So coming from the 60 down to the 30-20 level in our current base, plus whatever we have from new acquisitions, should keep us in the level below 1% for amortizations. 50 million, something I consider as a reasonable value for the future years. Then we are at a 7.3% EBIT, and with a financial result of somewhere between 25, 35, so around 30 million, and a tax level of 27% or below, it's unavoidable to achieve the 5% in the future. The details you will find in the next slides. This is a detail on financial result. You see that in the last 3 years we had some burden out of financing to carry and out of the interest situation. We are constantly working to get it further down and to reduce our cost of carry. For example, you might have heard already that we have paid back 120 million loans in August, so that our interest level will decrease in the future. And we work also on the other instruments and the whole financing structure, on the tools which we use in the future, on the financial instruments, to come to a more flexible financing structure, which then also in periods where we have high liquidity allows us to to use lower external money and to show lower interest. On the tax side, you have heard about our activities with regard to the integration of the Schuler Group, the squeeze out, which allows us to integrate the Schuler Group fully also into the German tax structure, which means more or less to generate tax units which are large and which have internally an offset of gains and losses, so that we not have any more loss-making tax units in the future, and that we can use losses carry forward out of the past, which then would hopefully bring us to a sustainable tax rate below 27%, maybe in the future also maybe low, but this depends on the profitability of the units in certain areas and our ability to compensate or to use these losses carry forward, as I said already. So 27% is the target for tax quota for the future. So, and this then should bring us, as I explained it here, to this higher than 5% net income for the future. That's one side, net income. The other side is cash, because dividend is paid out of cash and not out of percentage profitability. Other big area for work at the moment is the improvement of the cash flow. So, and we have given us a target of at least 85% cash conversion based on net income, which would lead to a free cash flow above 300 million, coming from 252 in the last years. How do we want to achieve it? Very simply, we want to, let's say, limit our spendings from net working capital simply to the growth portion, and also the investment part will be, let's say, oriented to our current depreciation plus everything what is necessary to grow. Yeah, the logic behind, I think you all are well aware about. In the midterm, long term, everything which you see in the P&L will also in the cash flow. So interest in the P&L will end up in interest in a cash flow statement. Same for taxes and provisions in the long run, and other value changes should level out to zero, so that at the very end you bring your net income into cash, but you have to invest a part of the cash for growth. We simply set 40 million increase in net working capital for growth initiatives. Might be 4 billion in areas, product business and service business, where we don't have huge payments and where we carry 20% of working capital. And if we grow this business by 5%, this would need a 40 million net working capital. Capital business growth target is simply to do it cash net working capital neutral, because this business mostly is funded out of down payments. Investments, gross investments, 50 million. We carry an investment base of 1.2 billion at the moment. If you grow it a little bit under proportionally to the growth of the business, this would mean also 50 million gross investments. Both together then, the fact that the cash conversion is a little bit below net income, but simply driven by future growth. And there is no harvest without seed, so we consider this as a reasonable way to approach our business. So here are the backups for net working capital and capex. Nothing really interesting to mention. It's all backup information, so that you can see that we are doing our target setting on a well-based figures basis. So, and everything together would then support our financial position and our liquidity position. We had 1.6 billion at the end of June, now reduced it by 120 million due to these repayments of loan. Consider further increase, or let's say consider further positive impact out of the second half year of the business, which is usually much stronger with regard to liquidity situation, because dividend is paid in the first half year. So a number somewhere in the direction of 500 certainly is what we want to see by end of the year. And in the long run, we intend after dividend and before major acquisitions to increase our liquidity at least per year. And this should give us enough room for maneuvering in the situations where we see some acquisitions opportunities. So high flexibility to act quickly as soon as we see opportunities in the market which we can get and which would fit to our business. And yeah, that's about the financials and the cash situation. And then the last two slides, equity portion, due to the more or less the Schuler and the metal situation in the last years, equity went a little bit down, but now we are strengthening it again by, let's say, having, let's say, good net income, and also a little bit last half year tailwind from in the OCI from currency and interest. So 18.6 we achieved in by end of June, and adding the second half of 21 certainly would give us the opportunity to achieve already something about 20% by end of the year. Yeah, this then is both together, liquidity and sufficient equity is the basis to ensure also for the future the payout ratio of 50 to 60% of our net income, and to deliver to the capital market what you expect from a company like ANDRITZ. Yeah, that's it about ANDRITZ overall financial performance to be expected in the near future. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Okay, many thanks. Q&A session is now open for any questions to Norbert on the financials. Or any other question? The other executive. Oh, we have Simon again. Simon.
All right.
That's okay.
So just a quick one. You haven't really mentioned return on capital as a sort of medium-term target. I just wondered what you had in mind for that.
To be honest, we want to stay with the targets we have announced at the moment, and don't want to create another, let's say, return on capital employed target, because return on capital employed, from my point of view, is an incentive for cherry picking, and our business has a highly fluctuating capital employed basis simply due to the highly fluctuating working capital based on the huge down payments which we have. I will take this as a point, and we will report on this in the next quarterly information.
Okay, thank you.
One additional reason that we are not using it is that the net working capital number plus the fixed assets is relatively low. So you can assume it's very nicely into the double-digit percentage typically. We can deliver the numbers this afternoon, but probably, but therefore it is fluctuating a lot. But every year it typically would have been, I would say, more in the 20s percentage rise. So no reason for concern, but not sufficiently challenging KPI for us.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other question, or to the other executive board members? Because we're now on the final presentation now, and then basically we then have the closing remarks from Wolfgang.
I'm disappointed. I would have thought. Sven, you're first man.
It's always the usual suspects asking the questions, so sorry for that. Just regarding your M&A hurdle rates, I mean, you now presented the divisional targets, the group targets. When you look at targets, I mean, do they have to immediately achieve those goals, or do you give them how many years typically to achieve these targets?
question goes to me. We are, let's say, looking to the targets from a perspective that they should at least not dilute in the short term our profitability. Yeah, so we certainly are not intending to buy, let's say, turnaround cases which will jeopardize our business for some years. So we expect then not immediately, but at least in a very short time, that they contribute to the overall group's performance.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I would have thought that somebody challenges Norbert on his strong statement that we cannot avoid reaching the 5% net income level. So you should get concerned if the CFO of a company gets bullish. But I want to remind you that Norbert said if many things are coming into reality or function as planned, then it would be unavoidable. So please don't feel that we are too optimistic.
We have a question from Samantha Biswas. Samantha?
Yeah, sure. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, thank you. Well, I had a quick question. We are very long-term investors, so I'm thinking over the next 1 or 2 business cycles, and I'm thinking about pulp. Now, pulp is, of course, at a much, much higher level than it has ever been. How do we think about it over the next couple of business cycles? I understand one structural driver has been more packaging because of e-commerce. Other than that, I understand the South America story, which has helped you over the last maybe 10 plus years. So, I'm struggling to figure out what is a sustainable order book for pulp, because it's tough to assume it will be 3.5 billion. It's also tough to assume it will be 1.5 billion that you had 10 years back. So how, I'm not looking for any exact guidance or anything else, but I'm trying to figure out if why would the world need, structurally double for the next many, many years? Or is it a passing phase in the order book and your order intake will slowly normalize to a more 1.5-2 billion euro level after maybe 3-5 years? How should I think about it?
Yeah, I believe that the growth is definitely driven by the market, but it's also driven by additional offerings we have. I also presented to you products which we are developing, and we believe they will grow in the future. Textile, all this biorefinery, the circle to zero. So we believe that even with a moderately strong market, there is for ANDRITZ a growth potential. So that would be on the long run. We would say that a lot of offerings that will be relevant in the next business cycle is available, and we will benefit from that.
No, that is very useful. As far as the growth is concerned, I get that. I am more struggling as to what is the base of that growth. If I look at your order book and order intake in pulp for the last 15 years, I see a significant jump. One jump I understand, your textile business, and the last 3 years, the big 3 projects over the last couple of years, I understand all that. But if I look at order intake, it is, significantly higher than last few years. So there are 2 ways I can think about it. Use this very high base and then grow it, or normalize the base and then grow it. I understand your growth projects and your new services, your textiles and everything else. So that's what I'm struggling against, because if I grow your current order intake rate of, a book of 3.5, 3.6 billion, that's one math. Another one is using more normal of 2.5. So that's where I'm struggling, because I understand it's lumpy, it comes in big projects. So what is a steady state scenario?
Recommendation is clearly normalize, and don't start with a peak and extrapolate the growth rate from there. I think you have seen volatility depending on whether we get 1, 2, or 3 large projects a year. I think we have shown that there has been a certain transformation over the last several years by adding several other uses other than taking the pulp into paper and board. That will continue in our opinion, so that should add a certain percentage to the market size. Viscose has added a lot over the last 2 years. That has been, as Joachim has pointed out, I think it's 15% of the global capacity that theoretically...
Recycled ban.
Oh.
Ban on recycled, recovered paper.
No.
Also.
I'm talking about viscose pulp. Of global capacity is 15%, yeah. If the 2 lines that we are currently starting up, if they would produce exclusively viscose pulp, which is not the plan. So also that we think will continue. But still, I would recommend to normalize in a reasonable way, but I'm not going to be more specific on that, and add the growth that we've indicated on top of that.
Yeah, no, that's very useful. Do I have time for another question, or?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Samantha.
Yeah, sure. So moving on to metals, and if you've already covered this, I can always get in touch with Michael later on. But as the transition goes on from ICE to EV, is there net anything we should be worried about in your metals division, or the stamping and everything you do and the materials and everything else that's used for EVs, you're pretty much indifferent?
I would say we are not specifically vulnerable there, because our deliveries into internal combustion technology is very small, while the parts of an electro vehicle or the parts produced from our products are in the electric vehicle as well as they are in an internal combustion vehicle. And I think that's all these metal sheet forming parts. And there is the change in the design of the cars, because the cars need to be designed differently, whether they have these big battery packs or not. Definitely our technology definitely gives us a good leverage.
Yeah, and ballpark, what percentage of your metal business comes from Asian OEMs? Ballpark. Do you have anything there, or most of the OEMs are Western world OEMs that you help?
From engine OEMs.
Not engine, I mean car OEMs, like you stamp the body parts. Now, if I look at Asian OEMs, like be Chinese, be Japanese, if I look at your customers in your metal business, ballpark, what percentage would be coming from Asian OEMs, excluding Japan?
Domenico.
Yes, it's quite a good question. I mean, if we exclude the Japanese ones, the transplants, I would say in the future we can expect between 30 to 50%. So it's quite sustainable. But let's be careful, because we are talking even about the European transplants. So they are going to invest in Asia as well. So
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I mean, I'm going by from the nationality of the OEM, not where they're putting their plans. So if I look at the US OEMs, when I mean US OEMs, I mean US domicile, not where they have the factory. So if I look at that, and if I look at the Japanese OEMs, the Chinese and the other Asians and Europe and US, and ask you the question, give me ballpark ideas, how much is Asia or China?
Okay, how much is in overall for us? I would estimate somehow between 15 and 25% max of the Chinese OEMs. We have few of them as our customer already. We have some emerging brands where we are delivering already, where we already have an installed base, and we see a handful coming up, existing Chinese, as purely Chinese OEMs.
Okay.
But during the day there was raised a question about consolidation. I do believe that especially in Asia, especially in China, there will be a consolidation of a few smaller OEMs.
And so if I think about metals and if I think about the future, you have done most of the heavy lifting, whatever you could do, very little heavy work left. Now you're waiting for the top line to help you to go to your target margins. And the way I'm thinking about it, you'll get there is, of course, global car production normalizes back to the 90 plus million units. And after that, how much of market share growth are you assuming in order for you to reach your targets? Or you're saying, no, we'll have the same market share, the world goes back to 90 million plus production per year, and we'll make our margins?
Now we definitively have to win some market shares. I'm convinced about this one. And I'm convinced that we are in the situation to win some market shares, because we cannot just rely on the growth in selling cars. I mean, this would be definitively the wrong strategy. And therefore, we are creating products for new markets. And during the day, I even mentioned that there is a new requirement on the market. So the demand in China, for example, press line, is a completely different one to what we have in Europe, and we are able with our setup to deliver exactly this specification, and with that we expect even an increase of market share.
So would it be a fair generalization that in order to reach your target margins in metals, the market share story will be the dominant one and not the industry going back to normal 90 million plus?
No, it is a mix, because we have to be careful, because in metals, whether it is metals forming, Schuler, or metals processing, we have completely different products.
Yes, I was talking about Schuler. Yeah.
Okay. If we are talking about Schuler, it will be a key to sustainably grow. That's the point. I mean, it is too risky to just go with the market CAGR. This would be definitively the wrong approach. That's what I said today. If there is more volume coming, of course we take it, but we want to increase our market shares with generating new products, even existing commodity products, but which were not suitable in the past for certain markets, especially in China. And therefore, the so many times called local for local strategy and product strategy will be in China as well. And with that, we will increase the market share.
Thank you. I'll just ask my last question and step aside. So so metals going to target margin is primarily will be driven by Schuler, not right? Schuler. It's the auto business which is going to get you to the targets, not the aluminum and steel. The aluminum and steel is doing well and will do whatever it is. But the main driver of going back to your target margins would be the auto piece. Am I understanding it right or not?
Joachim, shall I?
Maybe Seven. I think the target that are laid out cannot be reached if only Schuler will make these targets. That is clear. So both areas need to improve, and I think the plan is there. And also for the metals processing, we do not expect growth in the market. We need to grow in the markets that we have, and mainly through innovation, because that is the differentiation that we have. And with all the disruption in the industry, I think there is a good chance that we can grab some growth through that.
I'm sorry, you said acquisitions in processing?
No, I said we need to grow through innovations.
Okay, innovation. Sorry. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe I can add something. I mean, we have to be careful if we look at the figures of metals, because they're heavily impacted by NOIs. We have non-operating items included there, and the restructuring, especially we made in Germany over the last 2 years, was a substantial part of these losses. So it's not that we are coming from on an operational level from a huge minus level to the 6% we are targeting. I do believe that by being organized as today on a lower cost structure, already a little bit of volume makes margin and makes profitability. And I agree with Joachim Schönbeck, we have to improve in both areas by growth, by innovation, and by tough cost management, which I think it's one of the benefits we all had out of the pandemic crisis, that we learned how to manage our costs.
Thank you so much. Good luck.
We have a further question from Andreas Willi. Andreas?
Yeah, thank you very much. A question for Wolfgang Semper on Hydro, on the plan to get that to a 1.5 billion business again. Obviously, given the long cycle of that in terms of orders to revenues, you would need to have pretty good visibility on order intake for the near term to be able to get to 1.5 billion within a reasonable time frame on sales. So if you compare the pipeline you have today compared to the one you would have had 3 or 5 years ago, is that what gives you the confidence that we can get to the 1.5? Because obviously, if we look at the last few quarters, the last year or so, the order intake was more running at 1.3 billion, 1.35 billion.
Yeah, that's exactly the issue. The pipeline is good, but what we experience today is that there is a certain postponement still ongoing in larger projects. What we see on the short term, there is opportunities out for service and rehabilitation, which usually turns faster to sales as well. So we will not deliver this year, of course, these revenues, and maybe even not, or quite sure not even next year, since if it is a capital business, then it takes at least 1 year that we convert order intake into significant sales. But the pipeline is promising. The projects are well advanced. We also see all the governmental related environmental impact studies, social impact studies, and for some of the projects are done and fulfilled. So that's why we are rather confident that it goes in that direction. But of course, it's single project events which leads us again to this 1,500. The base business, of course, we are confident that we keep the level, but we need the one or other larger order, and this is a 0 or 1 event. But we are, I would say, cautiously optimistic on that.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Andreas. We have now Daniel Leon. Daniel?
Yeah, thanks. One question to Norbert Nettesheim on your breakdown, your bottom-up planning. When I look at your assumed volumes for the metals, you assume 1.5 billion. Earlier on, we had the breakdown in metals forming and processing, adding up to 2 billion. What's the reason why you remain at 1.5 here? And the second one, this 1 billion in separations seems to be rather, or have a rather good visibility as you have it in both scenarios. Should we expect this acquisition to come rather sooner or later? Yeah.
When you look into my slide, then there is at the lower right an asterisk which says based on exemplary and rounded revenues. When you do this kind of calculations, you have always to judge a little bit what should you show here. And in metals, we are currently certainly in the area where we let's say have a way to go. That's the reason why I simply have here in this area let's say, allocate it to the total risk, which we see, simply to get this number not too high and to give you a realistic picture. But you can also put this reserve somewhere else. It only should give you an impression that the range of 8 to 9% is possible to reach, and you can reach this with various options and various portfolios, and it's more or less kind of a exemplary number which I not a big message behind this number. Yeah, they have the target to reach 700 in metals processing and the 1.2 in metals forming. We are confident that these are realistic targets, and I simply allocated here the 400 reserve to the total. With regard to separation, clear. I think it came out in our presentations that this is the area where we certainly, let's say, have to close the biggest gap to the target revenue level, and as soon as we can get something here, we certainly will consider it very seriously. But there is no topic which is currently in the pipeline and which will materialize quickly. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Just to follow up the amortization, or the PPA that you assumed in calculating the net margin would somehow hint at an acquisition at the size of Xerium, right? In order to come there.
Yeah, that's the reason why I said when these things come, like I showed them here, then it is unavoidable arithmetically to get the 5%. This is exactly what I wanted to say. We have room for another acquisition in the size of Xerium in my calculation. Yeah, so the amortization would stay in a range of 50 million in the next years. Also, when we do such a big acquisition. So there's room for this, but it simply should show you that we have this room. It's not saying that we do it or that we have a clear target at the moment on the desk.
Okay. And last one from my side, how do you currently reflect on share buybacks? Is it something that you consider in the current environment?
Say it again, please. I didn't hear you.
Buyback shares.
So currently we have about 4 million shares roughly, I think, which obviously is also a certain drain on the equity. I mean, the easiest and fastest way to increase our equity is to sell 1 or 2 million of the shares we have. Obviously, we need to retain a certain level to be covered with regard to the option plans that are still running. But taking into account that we have a sizable number of shares in our stock, plus we have clearly the will to increase our equity, also our tangible equity, I would say, unless there is a dramatic development, we would not plan to further increase our shareholdings or keep the holdings of our own share.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As there are no further questions, I would like to hand over to Wolfgang again for his closing remarks.
Okay, well, thank you for whoever made it through the whole day. Thank you very much for your patience and willingness to follow us. We've tried to be as transparent as we can be. You may have noticed or seen a certain, let's say, a little bit more optimism with regard to growth. Why is that? First of all, yes, there is a certain limited amount of additional growth, of hope of growth. Why is that the case? Number one, we do not see any imminent big threat on our businesses, other than the big global crash that probably inevitably will come at some point of time. Nobody knows when. But even if that would come, I think we have shown last year that our business model is quite resilient, even in times of a shock, of a crash. But obviously, in such a case, we would not be unaffected. I would not want to say that. But again, I would not be very concerned about that. Why are we more optimistic? I think we have, in all our business areas, we have good market shares. In many cases, our assessment has been, and you have heard that we have been able to increase moderately our market share. We do not plan to do everything, including price cutting, to increase further substantially. But obviously we are following it, and ideally we can gain in small steps on our market share without disrupting the market, but just by gaining it from, let's say, smaller, less visible participants in the market. We have, I think, a good pipeline of innovation projects, of new products, improved products. Again, we gave you some details. Some details may have been too detailed, but at least you hopefully have the feeling that we understand what we need to achieve and have a clear plan what we want to achieve. On top of that, we have certain early, I would say, early ideas what we could do, which we have decided not to release and reveal here. I think we should be, or we think we should be further along and closer to the market or already in the market, rather than communicating this, let's say, very early ideas. But you can be sure that we have that, and many of them either go onto the service side, the aftermarket side, and a substantial part of our capital expenditure goes into this aftermarket side because the return for this investment is much better. You will also most likely see, if we make acquisitions, many of them will be in the aftermarket for the same reason. We will, I think, and everything we do and we plan, not everything, but a lot of that has a relationship or is grounded in this Green Deal, in increasing focus of governments, of companies on sustainability, on renewability, renewable resources. And as I've said, I mean, for me, our pulp and paper division is a best example. Practically everything is based on raw material wood. There's no more sustainable, renewable business around than the pulp and paper industry, being a net, at least on the pulp side, a net producer of green electricity on top of producing the pulp. Same for hydropower. So, whether you say it's 50% or it's 2/3 of our business, but clearly we are a green company, and taking into account the projects we have, I do not see us suffering from a tightening of green requirements, but rather benefiting from that. How much will it be and how quickly will it be? I think we can have long discussions on that. But again, we see it as a general medium-term upside and not so much a downside where we say we have to replace a certain amount of our business to make it at all sustainable, etc. So don't take us too optimistic, as always. But again, we would not have communicated this solid 7 billion euro and approaching 8 billion and solid 5% net income if we would not feel comfortable that we as a team can achieve these goals. They are challenging. There is no guarantee we can achieve them, and Norbert has shown you some scenarios, and we could add 4 more scenarios, changing some of the variables. But taking all in all, in our assessment and our desire to put up for us reasonably challenging goals, that's what we have decided to communicate. You can be sure that we will do everything to achieve that. And we look forward for your further attention and maintaining the contact we have, which we very much appreciate, because you are very knowledgeable, and it's always challenging but also fun and rewarding to discuss with you, and therefore many thanks for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for participating. Stay safe, stay strong, and see you next time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.